the puppies.
And welcome to... Hey everyone, I'm Josh.
I'm T.
We're the kids and these are the puppies.
And welcome to J&T's Journey. We're a working family with school-aged children and of course our puppies. We enjoy off-roading, camping, beaches, weekends away and exploring this great country of ours. Previously we had been posting as Ruby the Rubicon, but as time went on we found the channel was less about Ruby and more about us. So now we're J&T's Journey.
So we travel around in our decked out Jeep Gladiator, which we call Ruby, and often towing our extremely modified AVan cruise liner, which we call the Honeypot. And we are here to share our journey with you.
We'll be sharing a whole range of things on our channel. Camping videos, four-wheel drive trips,
Oh my goodness.
AVan tips and tricks, mishaps, misadventures and more.
To come along with us, don't forget to subscribe because we really appreciate your support.
Thanks for watching! Hey everyone, Josh here with J&T's Journey and welcome to our first live stream. I'm using some new tools that I haven't used for quite a while at the moment. So the purpose of this live stream is we're going to have a chat with an off-grid specialist and a licensed electrician so we can have a little bit of a chat about lithium batteries. For those of you who haven't met us before, my wife T and I, we own an AVan cruise liner, and it is perhaps the most modified AVan cruise liner. Certainly it's got the most off-grid power system in the AVan that I've ever seen before. The system has been built specific to our requirements, and we're pretty proud of where we've landed. It is a full Victron system. We've got 480 amp hours of lithium battery, a 1600 watt inverter, 900 watts of solar on the roof, and we can run the air conditioner overnight when we're out on location, and we have enough solar to recharge the batteries from that usage overnight the next day if conditions are fair. If it's a good day, we'll be charged by 1 p.m. in the afternoon, which is fantastic. As I said, we're here to talk about lithium batteries, all different aspects of lithium batteries, safety, how they can be installed, what the regs and requirements are. And to do that, we're bringing Landon from Zero Grid Australia on board to have a chat about that. So without any further ado, welcome to the live stream, Landon.
Hey, mate. Thank you. And I love that intro video as well. So I don't know if it was your internet. Hopefully it views all right. It was a bit like stoppy and starty, but I think it could be where we are as well. Relying on so much technology, aren't we?
Well, I think we're both coming via Starlink, aren't we?
Yeah. I noticed like we got a minute to kill to talk nonsense, don't we? We'll wait a bit. I notice sometimes with the Starlink, it like drops to the next satellite, you know, like it's grabbing one and then it grabs the other. And sometimes you're like, oh, then back type thing. So it's, but you know, it's super handy for me and our family to be anywhere and for you guys too, and have that connectivity. I think it makes you feel like you're a bit more, you know, like safe in a way, you know, like it's just communications and to ring out and stuff. So yeah, how good, eh?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll just say for our viewers, we're not at home. I'm not sitting in the camper in the backyard at the moment. We're actually out in the bush at an event. We're meeting up with another YouTuber who's running an event this weekend. So we are remote and off-grid as well. So we'll just get straight to it, Landon. Tell us, you know, a little bit about you. Who are you? What's your background and what do you travel in?
Fair enough. My name is Landon. I started Zero Grid, I should actually look it up, but 5 years ago, and it was around helping other people build epic off-grid systems. So I'm a Sparky, and it took me a fair bit to wrap my head around, you know, DC coupled systems and solar string voltages and that type of stuff. And I thought to myself, if it's this hard for me to wrap my head around, it must be 100 times harder for someone with, you know, a different background coming into it, looking at it type thing. So it's focused around helping people is the main thing. I do build stuff occasionally and whatever, but we travel. We're full-time in the bus for 5 years. Our bus is a Hino, an RG197. We're 19 meters long, about 16 ton with the car on the trailer. We've got 4.6 kilowatts of solar panels, a 5,000 VA inverter at 48 volts, and a 15 kilowatt hours of battery storage. So our system's sort of built over the years. You know, I find it important to build systems that are scalable, so you can add more batteries or add more solar and that type of stuff. Which for us, it's easy, but you've just gone straight to the full solar and full batteries as much as you can from day dot, haven't you? So it's
that's it. So to talk a little bit about our system, obviously we have an AVan cruise liner. It's a 2023 model. There's 480 amp hours of lithium, 1600 watt inverter which runs the air conditioner. There's 890 watts worth of mounted solar on the two roofs, and I want to stress, we very rarely see, you'll never see that number at the same time, even under optimal conditions. You know, the numbers that people provide for solar panel, optimistic at best. And we also have external blankets as well. And the system, it's funny, the system was originally built with the intention of being able to run the microwave, because we do travel with our kids, and the system was built to be able to not worry about running the microwave off grid to reheat food. You know, we do batch cooking on the road. Reheating food is a really important thing to us, and we actually hit that goal before we even upgraded to lithium batteries. And at some point it went from, okay, that was the original goal, to now how far can we take this? And I'm pretty happy with where we've landed. So
no,
a lot of technology stuff in the AVan, that's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And it's epic to have that you know, that goal of what you really want to be able to do, and work towards that. So some people it's about the air conditioning, some people it's about just the coffee machine in the morning, and you know, everyone's got their priorities, and that's always, you know, comes down to that first part of the design, like what do you actually want to do with it and how do you want to travel type thing. So it's good that you nailed that, you know, and then you built your system to suit that, haven't you? So love it.
That's it. So this live stream has come about. I got onto Landon through one of the Victron groups, and had a bit of a chat to Landon about, you know, who we are and who I am and what we've done and what we've been trying to achieve. And Landon understands our goals, and not every Sparky does. And I think there's a message in that, is that not every electrician that you talk to about putting off-grid systems in a caravan or a camper is going to understand what you're looking for, or is going to be able to figure out what you're looking for, and is going to understand the landscape. And talking to a few different electricians, the reason I brought Landon in is because Landon gets it, to put it simply. Landon gets it. So moving into the actual subject matter at hand, we're talking today about one of the most common questions we see on the AVan groups is, how do I put a lithium battery in our AVan? So tonight we're going to have a bit of a chat about all of the things related to that. So let's start off with a very simple question, and this one's just a yes/no. Landon, can we put a lithium battery in an AVan?
Absolutely. Yep. There's not a single vehicle that we can't put a lithium battery in. There's a good claim, isn't it?
Now, before we talk about how we go about doing that, let's talk about what are the different types of lithium batteries and their safety. I mean, everybody's seen the video of, you know, the Tesla or the Nissan Leaf or whatever it is, you know, pulled over on the side of the road. It's just been involved in a crash. There's a great big fireball coming out of the top of it, and people, all lithium's unsafe. It's going to burn your camper to the ground. Let's talk about what are the different types of lithium and what are the different safety factors involved in those.
For sure. So there's, you know, everything builds a reputation, right? And unfortunately, lithium's reputation, it didn't start off that great, you know, like the early technologies with like the Lions and all of that type of stuff weren't as stable and weren't as safety conscious. With any new technology, it's going to be like that. But with the latest technology that we have now with the live PO4s, that they're so well managed, and I think we were chatting the other day about like fires and what causes these fires, and I think there's a huge important part of inside of your lithium battery being the BMS, which is the battery management system, right? And if we're buying cheap no name brand batteries, they're going to have lower quality components, right? And that's those components is what's stopping these things, getting too hot or getting too cold or over discharging and all of that type of stuff. So we're putting our focus on those, and I think the few bad ones out there that burn these caravans down to the ground give it a bad reputation for the whole spread of them, and it's a very small amount, and I guess that's what the Australian standards are to do as well. It's to make sure that these are done to a standard so that if it's built to this, it's going to be safe type thing.
Yeah, and for the lithium batteries that we see in cars that are inherently unstable and the lithium batteries in caravans, let's just talk a little bit about what are the differences between those two batteries, because I think the problem is people refer to lithium batteries, but lithium actually covers a whole subset of a whole bunch of different chemistries. And the batteries that we put in caravans have earned the reputation of the batteries that they put in cars, however undeserved. So what are what's the difference between on a chemistry basis, what's the difference between a lithium battery that goes in a car, that goes in an EV, that is impossible to put out once they ignite, and a LiFePO4 battery, which is what we put in caravans?
For sure, and I don't know the specific makeups of the chemistries of the electric cars and that type of stuff, and I'm sure it's similar. We see a lot of fires caused by electric scooters and cheap lithium products and that type of stuff. But what I do know about the chemistry in the batteries in motorhomes and caravans, that the live PO4s are the ones that are more stable, and and having that importance around that management. They are well managed to be contained. So I think I'm not so familiar with all the EV stuff of the makeups and that type of stuff, but it's definitely the importance of around the safety on the caravan and motorhome stuff that I am sure of.
Yeah, so I think from what I understand, the biggest issue is that the lithium batteries that are put into the cars are designed for maximum energy density, and they're of a chemistry that can cause them to go into thermal runaway, which is where the lithium battery actually provides its own oxygen to fuel the fire once they catch fire, whereas an LiFePO4 is a lot more stable technology, and it isn't going to go into that thermal runaway. They can still fail, but they won't cause an uncontrollable self-fueled fire that will burn everything to the ground in their wake.
For sure, and that's the importance part of the BMS in the smaller life PO4s as well. It's to manage those current draws out of those batteries. But the amount of power drawn from an electric vehicle is huge in comparison. So we're really we're controlling that limit on these smaller batteries to keep them in that real happy zone type thing. So it would be such a hurdle in that industry to be maintaining these things, because you have such a huge demand, but our demands are a bit more manageable through the benefits of a decent BMS as well. So
cool. All right, so now that we've established if we're going to go the way of LiFePO4, let's talk about what's required to put them into a camper. Now, obviously, I've done this, and I'm familiar with the standards. But let's talk about what are the standards and what are the requirements that apply to installing a lithium battery into, for example, an AVan.
Yeah, for sure. So it's the Australian standards is AS 3001.2, the 2022 edition, and that was a big change in the industry. It for some reasons it was a shock to people, but really the standards before that were so old and outdated that it didn't cover so many of the modern day problems that we see today. So it was a much needed update in the standards, but it's that has a pretty clear outline on how we are to do things, and I always see them as a minimum standard, right? Like if we decide if they give us an option to do one thing, this or this type thing, and we do all three of them, that's absolutely fine. That's even perfect, to go above and beyond. I don't think there's any sane person who would argue with you, but I guess like to without quoting the exact Australian standards, but the main change in that new rule book in 2022 was about not installing lithium batteries in a habitable space, is its wording. So habitable is, to me, my interpretation of that word is anywhere that you can sleep, eat, sit, cook, that you can physically be in on a daily basis. So we're not to have them in a habitable space. So a common way to solve that solution is when we have buses like ours, we have a decent understorage compartment, that is it's not habitable, right? Like I could get in there, right, but it's going to be hard. I'm not going to just drink my cup of tea in there. So it's
not the primary living space, no.
Exactly. So often in a lot of setups we have a suitable solution, or even like a bin space, like in a bus, or a boot space in the front of a caravan and that type of stuff. And where the challenge comes from when it's smaller is that we need to create that space within our space. So that's where creating a box. I've made a video actually about explaining the battery compartment and that type of stuff, and I think it's helpful. I haven't watched it in a while, but it's about creating that space. So what we're trying to do is to prevent any lethal gases that there is a potential to be leaked from the lithium battery outside of that habitable space. So the box is to be vented only to the outside. And the interpretation of the rules from me is that it needs to be like in a box, vented to the outside, and secured, with a tool. So you can't just, plastic tub, flip the lid off, easily type thing. You need to go in there with a purpose to take the lid off type thing. So that's probably the huge change that was a shock to the industry, right? In 2022 when the rule book come out, and then in 23 they give us like a grace period of introduction of these standards. So and every state in Australia is a little bit different on that, but the rule book, it's other statements and how did I explain it, like requirements to meet is that it needs to be well secured. So which to you and I, that's obvious, right? Like we need to mount this thing, and often in buses and stuff like that, I'll have like an eyelet with a strap over the top, something that you can take out whenever. But some people make metal brackets with threads and all sorts of things. So tick that. The other one for a lithium battery, it requires a BMS. So the BMS is the battery management system that I spoke about earlier, about being inside of the battery to manage the battery. And the BMS needs to have, I've got notes here I'm reading, over voltage and under voltage protection, over temperature, under temperature protection, and over current protection. So that's what that device inside of the battery is to do. And basically what the BMS will do, its main priority is about protecting itself, right? It actually doesn't give a shit about giving out power. So if it's too hot, it'll turn off. If it's too cold, it'll turn off. If you draw too much power out of it, it'll turn off. And what was the other one? Under voltage as well. So if it's too flat, it'll turn off, right? Like it's just going to save itself. It's each for your own attitude. So that's and that's why as well that I put importance on choosing a decent battery, because we're putting a lot of responsibility on a mini computer inside of the battery, right? To be making sure that it's controlling all of those things. So that's important. And then the other one is about that it requires a battery monitor or a state of charge display. So which can be an app on your phone. It can be a screen on the wall. You've got a Servo GX and a touchscreen in your AVan, don't you, Josh?
Yes, we do. We've got a Victron Ekrano GX system. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Ekrano. Yep. I love them. They've actually got a lot more processing power than the Servo, so that I love them. But anyway, we get distracted. We're good at this, aren't we? But and the other one is batteries to be fused within 200 millimeters of the terminals or up to a meter if the conductors are protected. And protected, to me, my interpretation of that would be an extra sheathing on the outside. So not necessarily the black split conduit stuff. I see that as a visual protection. I don't really class it as having too much of a mechanical protection. So I think of like normal grey conduit that we would use on a house, running around a post or something like that. That level of protection is how I would interpret that. And the final one is the batteries to have a main isolating switch. So basically an on-off switch to be able to safely shut it down, to be able to work on it or to store it or however you want. So I'll go over those again just so we can remember it. So not to be installed in a habitable space. We talked about that. We can create a non-habitable space inside of any type of setup, but especially the AVans, well secured. The BMS with those features of overvolts, undervolts, over temp, under temp, and over current protection. The battery state of charge display, the fuse within 200 mil or up to a meter if the conductors are protected, and the batteries to have a main isolating switch. So that's basically what I can't remember how much the standards was. Are they about $160 or something like that, mate? But that's basically what the book tells you. So
yeah, I don't think they're that expensive. So I have a mobile subscription, or I had the mobile subscription when I built out the system here. I think it was less than $100 a year for the mobile subscription. Now, that doesn't give you access from a browser. It's just an app on your phone, but it does give you access to all of the what we'll call the AS3000 standards, which is it includes a whole bunch of standards, and I'm sure Landon will correct me if I'm wrong here, but it's basically the electrical standard rule book in Australia. And so there's a whole heap of standards. They all start with 300 that cover various things. They can cover eventing, they can cover mobile dwellings, they can cover temporary installations, mining sites. Like there's a whole heap of standards. And it gets and once you buy the subscription, it gives you access to the whole lot. So yeah,
perfect. That's a great affordable solution as well. So I'm into buying standards. I've got a collection of them, PDFs. So I just keep adding them to them. I'm like, I need a standard out of a ground mount system for a bloody whatever. I'm like, I'll just go buy it. So it's just an ongoing thing. But that's the joys of the world, I suppose. But yeah, hopefully that.
So we had a message. We've had some messages come through in the chat, so we'll just address these at the moment. Somebody's put into ChatGPT. I guess there's probably actually two questions out of this. Somebody's put the question of whether or not lithium batteries need to be walled off into ChatGPT, and the response can essentially be summarized as in no, because they don't vent off gases and this and that and the other. First of all, my question to you is, what's your opinion on using tools like ChatGPT to interpret regulations?
Well, I actually had a first-hand experience with this, right? Like there is a rule around fusing solar panels when they get to a certain number, right? And yep. I knew in my head, because I've read the standards multiple times, that it's when it gets to 3. I dumped the Australian standards in there, the PDF, and I asked it, just remind me again what that rule is about the solar panel, string fusing solar panel. It said there's no such rule. All you need is an isolating switch. And I was like, nah, mate, like there is a rule in there. Look again. And it argued with me. Like we went back a couple of minutes, and then I thought, you know what? bugger this, I know how to solve this problem. And I opened up the PDF myself, scrolled through the 160 pages, and I found it, a screenshot, and sent it to it, and it said, "Oh, you are right." So, you know, it's like with all things, it's a tool. It's to be used, and often with a grain of salt. Like, really, to me, like it's collecting. It's really fast Google, right? It's collecting all the information from the internet, and then it's spitting out a general answer from all that information. And I don't have to explain to anybody about how there's a lot of crappy information on the internet as well. So if it's been fed that information to spit out an answer, we're going to get some pretty varied opinions type thing. So I love it. I use it all the time. I'm not dissing it at all, but it's has its purpose for sure.
Yeah, I think the message is if you want the right advice when it comes to electrical standards, Sparky, who specializes in that field.
Yeah, for sure. And it's also like the responsibility of the Sparky who signs their license away on it, right? So it's up to their interpretation of it. It's a little bit like me explaining about what a mechanical protection to me is. You know, like the standards just say that it's that the conductors need to be protected, right? Like you could argue that putting a layer of heat shrink over it is a layer of protection, right? But you know, my interpretation is it needs to be a medium duty, is what I call it, conduit, and that's my interpretation of the rules. And I'm not to say that one's wrong, but that's what I find important. So that's what I follow those things. So you can get 5 Sparkies in a room to read the same standards, and you'll probably get 5 varied opinions on what these rules mean. So, you know, like, this is my opinion. So, and that's you know, what you've asked me here to express, and it's my living as well. You know, like, this has been 5 years of my time, you know, focused on this Australian standards to deliver systems to people. So
yeah, I think probably the message here is that ChatGPT is probably not a reliable source when it comes to you know, legal requirements for installation of anything.
Yeah, for sure. It's to be
standards are in place.
Yeah.
Regardless of what ChatGPT's opinion is, standards are in place. All right. So the next question was going to be, how can we go about satisfying those requirements inside of an AVan? So in our camper, and unfortunately, I did try to upload a photo into the tool that I'm using here, but it wouldn't work. But we do have a whole other video on the power setup in this, and Landon has gone through that. We built a plywood enclosure underneath the bed in the location where the standard batteries are. The enclosure, we removed the pump and relocated the pump. The enclosure was basically built around the batteries, and it's actually exceptionally difficult to get into that enclosure. It is dual port vented, so it's vented both through the floor and through the side of the AVan. Now, those vents are actually the factory vents that come for the lead batteries. And if you're going to build an enclosure for a lithium upgrade inside of an AVan, I think the easiest way, and Landon, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong here, but the easiest way would be just to build a plywood box to go in place of the standard, you know, plastic battery box thing that they come with. Drill a hole in the floor into the vent that goes through the floor, drill a hole in the side of it, attach the side vent pipe to it, put a lid on it, screw it down, make sure that the wood's all sealed with like liquid nails or silicone or something like that, and there's like a foam seal on the lid where it gets screwed down. Is there anything wrong with putting a lithium battery in an AVan?
And I love that that way of doing it, and that's exactly how I approach it, and that video would explain that as well, basically to the T. And yeah, I was just reading the comments while you were saying that, and I 100% agree that the gentleman, I assume gentleman, was saying about how it traps its heat in there, and that's what, like, you know, we're sort of fixing one problem on one hand, but we're creating another on the other hand by putting things inside of boxes to trap that heat in, which is a bit counterproductive. But, you know, like, I'm not the one writing these rules either, right? So, like, there's no point shooting the messenger. Like, it's that's what the rules say. Like, and if we want them to comply, if we want to have no dramas with our insurance companies and all of that type of stuff. It's a no-brainer, right? And you do you if that's not what your thing is, but I think the importance there of like not trapping the heat is more vent the better. Like you've done. We've got a floor vent and we've got a side vent, and sometimes like I deal with all customers, shapes and sizes, and sometimes they have like a sprinter van, say, and we can't quite get a vent through the wall. Like it's just not practical because of the way the frames are and all of that type of stuff. And what I often get people to do is to put 2 floor vents through and to cut one off flush with the floor, and to put like a mesh on the outside to make sure that no mozzies and that type of stuff can get in there. So cut one off flush on the floor and cut one off sort of 10 to 20 mil from the top. So, and that's just to encourage that ever so slightly. Like I know that it's 2/5 of bugger all that we're making a difference to, but it's going to help with the longevity of it, to help that hot air out and that cool air in type thing. So
creates a bit of convection flow inside the enclosure.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. The tiniest bit, right? Like, and you can argue that, and that's fine. But it every little bit helps. And something as well, like when we can, is to build the boxes slightly oversized. Like you're limited, like with your batteries. Like how much space do you have around your batteries? Is there a lot?
Not a lot. Not a lot. There's it's about 30 mil in each direction.
Yeah, which is it's good. It's to help that little bit of airflow. If we could go to 50 mil, great. If we go to 100 mil, great. But if we can go to 30, that's also great, because it's our best efforts. And to be keeping those cool. So I think what was the question about how to satisfy those rules? And I think that's probably the biggest hurdle in most. In most installs, really, especially caravans and stuff like that, and that box solution is the best way. And something I love building things out of is form ply. Form ply is just nice to work with. You can put a big bead of silicon on it, squeeze it together, put some screws in it, and it holds strong. So some type of gasket, to contain those air, the gases and that type of stuff, if that was a thing. So
Okay, cool. All right, so there are also offerings, battery offerings now. I'm not 100% sure on the brands, but there are some offerings that provide a battery, which is essentially a battery in a box with a vent port on the side of it. What's your opinion on those as like a drop-in solution?
Yeah, I was only thinking about this today. I went for a little drive to go bike riding with the girls, actually, and firstly, I think it's a great idea, right? Like it's a great solution to the problem, and especially like retrofitting and that type of stuff. Sometimes you're going to get a little spot and things like that. But I think if we can avoid that, it would be of benefit. And my main reasoning is that with a box like you've got in your AVan, Josh, that if Mozzie's got in there and Ants got in there, it's not the end of the world, right? Like it's not going to be fun. It's not great. But if Ants and Mozzie's got inside of your BMS in your battery, and I'm a Sparky. I've been a Sparky. I started when I was 21, so whatever that is, 15 years. But it's like the amount of times that you see things blown up because they're full of insects, right? Like they just nestle in there because there's a little bit of heat, especially through those winter periods and stuff like that. So I think there would be, you would want to be really sure that was completely sealed, that vent tube, to make sure that we're not filling that up with ants, because they'll chase the warmth, right? Like, in a cold winter, like where you are, central New South Wales, it gets bloody cold, right? Like, and they're all trying to find the warmth. So yeah, I think it's a great idea. If that's the options that we have available, sure, we can manage that. But if we can avoid it and build an enclosure, I think that would be my preferred method. So does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Charging systems. So we've established that yes, you can put a lithium battery in an AVan. What do we need to do to our charging system? So most of the AVans come with a stock standard, or the more modern ones anyway, come with a projector charger. They're a multi-stage charger. They're about this big. They do 7 amps. They're cheap. They do the job. The older AVans have like the really old AVans have a big panel mount thing that's about this big that was designed for, wet cell lead acid batteries. What do we need to do to our charging system if we want to put a lithium battery in an AVan?
Yeah, for sure. And this is important around keeping the battery happy, right? Like, because they are a different beast, and we're to make sure that we are appeasing the battery and especially the BMS yet again, but to be hitting the right voltages so that it doesn't get grumpy with us, right? Like, because it's got all the smarts in it. It's got the under voltage protection. It's got the overcurrent protection, all of that stuff built into it. And if it doesn't see the right volts and too many amps or whatever it is, it's going to kick us off, and it's does its job of shutting down. So, but so inside of the lithium batteries, there's multiple cells. Like, you can think of them as 9-volt batteries, multiple cells, and they are strung together in a formation to create the overall voltage. And often the batteries, the balancing boards only kick in that higher percentage of the charge cycle. So it's important to be hitting those maximum charge rates that the battery manufacturer specifies. So the projector system is that has a lithium profile on it, does it?
The more modern ones do, but most of them don't. So I guess the question is, like, for a van that has chargers that were designed for lead-based chemistries, do they need to upgrade their charging systems?
Yeah. Yep. The answer is yes. That was a long-winded answer to that. That wasn't it? But you're right. Yes, because of those reasons that I explained. It's very important to be hitting those numbers in those batteries to keep them happy. That's what we're trying to do, right? And even I can go to the next level and say that it's best to use chargers that have an adjustable, like a user profile for those battery voltages, so your charge rates, because every battery has a slight variation of what they call the perfect amount of volts. So some will be 14.4, some 14.5, some 14.6, and that's what they'll want for their charge rates. And it's important to be hitting those numbers to be keeping those batteries happy. So to have something like a smart solar or a Renogy rover with a screen on it and that type of stuff is important to hit those settings correctly. So yep, we need to upgrade all the ways that the power is coming into the batteries to charge the batteries.
Okay, cool. All right, moving on from the battery, another common upgrade on an AVan is solar. Certainly, we've got a lot more than a little bit of upgrade. My personal preference for an AVan is a 310-watt Sunman e-arc panel across the front, and I believe you're a Sunman dealer, or you can get the Sunman panels. They fit perfectly across the front roof. They use the real estate there really nicely. But I believe there are a bunch of regulations around solar, fusing requirements, voltages. What are the requirements, and what do you believe are the best practices that should be adhered to when you're putting solar onto an AVan?
Yeah, for sure. And a lot of these practices or rules, we're not really getting near those because of the smaller footprint of solar space. We're not too stressed. I'll go through the rules and it'll make a bit more sense. But so the way that this comes out of the AS 3001.2 as well, and the first rule is about maximum string voltages. So that is dependent on the way that the solar panels are joined together. So if we got two 20-volt solar panels and they're strung in series, which means positive to negative, and then we have on the end of that a positive and a negative coming around, they'll be 40 volts. So we add volts when it's in series, and when it is in parallel, we add amps. So that's how that works out. So sometimes, some situations when we're adding lots of solar panels, we get close to that 120, but I don't think that, don't know, tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that you would have that problem necessarily with an AVan because of your limited roof space.
No, so I've got two panels in series on two little 50-watt panels in series on the back roof, and they're, I think, 36 VOC panels. So we do get to sort of 60, 70 volts on that string is not uncommon, but I mean, I don't know how you'd wire a combination of panels to get up to 120 volts on an AVan. I just don't think there's enough roof real estate to do it.
For sure. But it's a part of the rules, and we've got to make sure that we're not upsetting these rules as well. But the other rule, and this is the one that I talked about earlier with ChatGPT giving me a bit of a bum steer, and I had a little bit of an argument with it, but is about the individual solar panel fuses. And the rule is that if there's 3 or more in parallel, that individual solar panels will need their own inline fuses as close to the junction as possible. So it's a long story to explain why that is, but parallel is when we have multiple solar panels and we're joining all of the positives together and all of the negatives together into, like, I would call it an MC4 wire connector, which funnily enough looks like the letter Y. And for a 3-to-1, it would have 3 legs on the top and 1 out of the bottom. So that's how the if you're using one of them, it's generally because they're in parallel, and that's when we need to have those individual fuses on the panels. The other requirement is that the solar cable needs to be double insulated. So a lot of automotive cables are double insulated. So the insulation is the sheathing or the colored bit on the cable. So so the inner, you're going to have like copper or aluminium, whatever the conductor is, and then there's going to be an outside, generally a color like a red or a black, and then on the outside of that we're going to have like a thicker sheath as well. So that's the type of cable that we're looking for. The other thing is a PV isolation switch. So this is a circuit breaker, which also acts as a current limiter, which is mounted as close to the solar charger as practical. So I always think about, like, you know, I read the words that this is the rule, and then I sit and I ponder while I'm driving the bus down the bloody freeway, and I'm trying to work out with what those reasons for those rules would be. And my interpretation of why that would be is so that we have a quick access point to isolate the incoming power, right? So if we are having a fault within our enclosure, we can quickly turn off the battery isolator to stop the power coming in from the battery, and then we can quickly switch the solar panel isolator to stop the power coming in from the solar panels to isolate the power coming in. So, and you know, like it's you know, some it's easier than others, but for me, like, I'd need to get the ladder off of the trailer, I'd need to get it on the roof to be able to disconnect it, and by then, you know, a little fault can become a big fault. So and then the other one in the rules, which is another common sense one to me, but it's securely fixed. It's to make sure that the bloody thing is going to stay on there when you're doing your 100 Ks across the hay plains. So I can go over them again just for because I mumble things up, but the max string voltages not to exceed 120 volts. Individual fuses, if we have 3 or more in parallel, the PV isolation switch to be installed as close to the solar charge or MPPT as practical, and securely fixed. That's that's how the rules work. And I guess it's that they're not really that hard to appease in AVan. In buses, it's a little bit different. We use household solar panels with like a 45 volt VOC that sometimes we're getting you know, we have to combine them in particular ways to appease those rules.
Yeah, and just for the viewers watching, none of our panels exceed the limitations that are required for the extra isolation and whatnot. But we do have sitting underneath the seat that I'm sitting on at the moment, actually, are 2 circuit breakers that are double pole circuit breakers that are appropriately rated to the solar panels that are on the front roof. And in the back compartment where we have all of our gear inside of it, there's another 2 circuit breakers, double pole DC rated circuit breakers. And I do stress DC rated circuit breakers, not AC rated circuit breakers, because you can get yourself in trouble with arc flashes and all sorts of things if you use the wrong type in the back bin to isolate the panels and also provide overcurrent protection on those. So that's how we've gone about satisfying that. That being said, we're not over the string voltages. We're not over the any of the parallel limitations there. But when I'm working on the system, you really need to have a way to shut the panels down easily, or shut the system down easily. And yes, you can grab the MC4 connectors and you can pull them apart, but as I'm sure you'll agree, Landon, pulling MC4 connectors apart is a pain in the ass.
Yeah, they're tight, aren't they? And I think like there's rules in AS3000, which is excuse me, electrical standards for wiring houses, right? And there's a requirement for air conditioners and hot water services to have an isolation switch next to those too. And I believe that this is for the same reason, and it's to save lazy workmanship of that. Oh, I'll just quickly change it because I can't be bothered walking around the other side to the switchboard to isolate it. And it's the same mentality as how I would see it as well. So if we're working on it, we can isolate it, and there's no excuses, but I just wanted to show, I don't know how good it is, but they're the breakers that I like to use. They're no arc breakers, like a double
they're
pole.
exactly what I've got fitted in here. So
I love them, but there's I've never had a problem with a single one of them, but and they're rated at often there's a series that are rated at 360 volt and another one at 500 volts, but double pole DC breakers. So
cool. All right. So what type of solar panels would you recommend for an AVan, taking into account weight, size, and cost? And in particular here, I want to talk about, obviously, we've gone with a full flexible solution on our camper. I want to talk about, I guess, the variation in quality of solar panels that's available on the market, and what type of panels would you recommend and why?
Yeah, for sure. And generally, I am a huge fan of glass panels, right? Like that's they are always going to be, in my opinion, a better performer. They have better cooling capacity. Solar panels hate heat, so glass panels are my favorite. But there's certain times when we're concerned about weight, not just the overall weight, but like for the AVan, it's about lifting the bloody thing up too, right? Like if you have an extra 60 kilos on that, like you and I would be, possibly capable of that. Like that's not too bad, but like having lightweight fiberglass roofs, and we're adding too much weight in the wrong places for such a setup. So that's where the flexible type solar panels are the way to go, and they're probably a prime example of such a huge variation of scale of the premium ones and the ones that are not so great quality. I'm trying to be nice, aren't I? But
well, I mean, you see it all the time, right? You see it on eBay. They're like 400 watt flexible solar panel, and the thing's this big.
Yeah, for sure. And that's why, like, it's a bit like, to me, choosing stuff like that, it's like buying a used car, right? Like we don't just judge what we're buying, we're judging on who we're buying it from. So if we're buying it somewhere like that from a no-name individual, like there's no real credibility or responsibility for them to be doing the right thing, right? But if we're buying a flexible solar panel from one of the big players in the game, like somewhere like Spring is, or Outback Marine, or Solar 4 RVs, or myself, Zero Grid, like we only stock stuff that we love, right? And you're going to see a lot of Sunmans. There's another brand as well that I've got.
For a long time, the Sunman panels were the only. I don't know if they still are, but I think for a long time the Sunman panels were the only STC approved panels, which means they qualify for the government solar rebates if you put them on a compliant system.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, they're definitely the leaders in the flexible solar panels. But then my runner up is the Renogy flexible solar panels, and I only say that because I sell a lot of Renogy gear, but like I'm a one-man show, right? Like I'm only selling gear that's not going to come back with a million troubles. Like I don't have time to be dealing with that. So and I've had a lot of good success stories about the Renogy flexible solar panels as well. But I think like the importance comes in the installation around them as well, like installing them correctly. Sunman have a really good document that uses the did you use the tape? They have like some double-sided tape.
So I know the document you're referring to, and I think there's 4 or 5 different installation methods listed as and it's all got to do with what they'll warrant and what they won't warrant. I think is if you want the warranty to be honoured on the panels, you have to use one of their approved installation methods. So we went direct with their minimum standard is 1.6 mil VHB tape, and we went with 1.6 mil VHB tape. and they specifically tell you exactly where you have to put the tape on the panels. And again, I tried to upload the photos of this because I have a beautiful photo of the solar panel that's on the front roof laid out on the dining room table with all the VHB strips underneath it. But essentially, the tape has to be laid down between the cuts in the panels. And if you're installing a solar panel, you'll instantly know what I'm talking about. To the viewers, you'll straight away see it when you get the panel and you lay it out on the bench. But if you put the tape anywhere else, they won't cover it in a warranty. They'll knock you back if something goes wrong. So
I guess it's about pressure on it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So they're very, very strict. But yeah, all of our solar panels are held on with VHB tape, and they've been on there for 18 months. And we've actually had a few people pipe up and say, "Oh, they've been on there for 18 months, so they've seen 3 weeks of sun." No, our camper lives in our backyard, up in full sun, in the conditions, 365 days a year. And it's been exposed to some pretty rough conditions. And 18 months later, there's no sign of any lifting, no sign of delamination. And we do check it regularly, right? Because, it's double-sided tape. You want to make sure that this stuff's not going to come off in transit. And we haven't had any issues.
And I think it's a little bit like, before we touched on how the cheap lithium batteries is what's giving the whole lithium battery industry a bad reputation. There's a small percentage of the ones that not to touch. And it's the same with using tape to secure your solar panels, right? If you use the wrong tape and don't clean your surfaces and don't follow the instructions, of course it's going to not be that successful for you. But there's using the right tape and the right installation methods is correct. And that's why I mentioned that document, because that's my go-to. If someone's asking about mounting flexible solar panels, I'm like, you know what, these guys are the leaders in the industry. This is how they recommend it. Follow their rules and you can't go wrong. But it's it's a common one. I love making videos about myths that I see on Facebook forums and stuff like that. And one of them has been don't glue down your solar panels, which I disagree with, because there's a right way and a wrong way of gluing them on, right? And the tape method is exactly the same. But look at our bus, for instance. We're 11.5 meters long, and there's not a single rivet in the side of that bus, right? That panel has been on there and it's glued on, and that's been on there for 30 years. It's crazy. So doing it right is going to be the key. So I love it, mate.
Yeah. Cool. All right, so we've covered off batteries and chargers and solar. What if we want to add an inverter in our AVan? So everyone's seen the cheap Kings inverters. We'll just go down to Adventure Kings. We'll pick up a 3,000 watt inverter. We'll throw it in our AVan. We'll connect it to the battery, and we'll plug the 240 volt cord into it, and we'll get power in our AVan. Is that a good option, or should we be putting something, pass through inverter in, these sorts of things? What are our options if we want to put an inverter in?
For sure. And I often use a term that I call it fit for purpose, right? For some people to have an inverter in the booth seat that they can put their blender on the ground, plug it in, blitz their smoothie in the morning, and then, pack it all up. And, that's fine. That's when, that solution's great. But, the way that I really like to do it is to hardwire them in with a changeover switch. So then you have the ability to be on grid or off grid. That's my favorite way for certain type of inverters. The Victron Multiplus that's in your van, Josh, has a really good feature of the changeover ability. So when you plug it into the grid, you'll hear the relays click, and they open and close a neutral to earth connection, which that's the connection on how the RCD operates type thing. So I guess the important part is we really need to be making sure that the safety features that are designed in the van are still in operation when we go changing things. To bang in in your example, a King's inverter with an extension lead, into the back of a PowerPoint or something like that. Yes, it works, but I would sleep better. And if customers coming to me suggesting that type of stuff, I always point them in the direction of an electrician to get it tested, you know, for operation. So, and that's operation for safety switches, right? Like, isn't that why we're all here? Like to be making sure that our systems are safe. Like that's it's a huge importance of mine. So I think, you know, spending a bit of time to make sure that it's got inbuilt safety features and that it's wired correctly for those you know, features to be operating in that time when, you know, when things do go wrong, we want the safety features there, type thing.
Yeah, cool. Now that we've talked about sort of the technical requirements, let's talk about sizing. So, you know, everyone says, I want to upgrade to lithium. I want to upgrade to solar. I want to put an inverter in my van. And everyone comes back and they say, what do I need? And everyone will come back and say, oh, you need 100 amp hour lithium. You need a 200 amp hour lithium. You need 300. You need a 1,000 watt inverter. You need a 3 kilowatt. You need 1,000 watts of solar. You need 100. How do we go about sizing a system?
I've actually started writing out how I decipher and how I get the people into categories, basically, and it's usually around how you use your caravan or your setup, and how often you use it and how much money you want to spend, right? Like there's those three pillars that are variables for everyone, and that's why I get so annoyed at you know, comments like that on Facebook when people are just spitting out numbers. You know, they're like, well, you need 300 amp hours and you need 1,000 watts of solar and you need this, and it's like, well, you haven't even thought about what the person's trying to achieve, you know. And I guess like that power audit type of thing is necessary to work out what you're wanting to run, how long you're wanting to run it for. Like it's a multi-faced you know, individual answer type thing. And even like on my website, I've got like kits for buses, and every now and again I'll just strip it all out, because I'm like, kits are a bunch of BS, right? Like I'm like, because it needs to suit the individual, but you know, it helps me to start guiding people in that right thing. But yeah, it's around like what you're wanting to run. You know, your systems ran around like the microwave in those evening periods when you've driven all day and you want to, you know, bang the spag bog through the microwave to, you know, quickly feed the kids so you can wrap it all up, go to bed, and then running the air conditioner on those hot summer camping so you can camp like a bit more of a window throughout the year. So your system's built around that, which means you've got a massive battery capacity, and you also need to capitalize on the solar because you love parking up for long periods of time. But you know, for some people who like drive every day or every second day and they're only using a coffee machine, their system is the total other end of that scale. You know, we still, like, a fair bit of solar is usually the key, but they can get away with a smaller battery capacity, and you know, we can emphasize on charging from like DC to DC charging, and you know, like it's got all day to recoup that charge, right? Or use the power while the sun's up. So because you're not generally having coffees at night time. Some people do, but that's each to their own, isn't it?
Yeah, not for me. I can't sleep if I do that. So, yeah.
All
right. So,
if I have a coffee after 10 o'clock, I'm done, I reckon. You know, like it needs to be between the window 6 and 10.
I found it's an age thing for me. I hit
Is it?
30, and if I have a coffee after midday, I don't sleep. So, anyway.
Yeah.
All right, getting to sort of we're approaching an hour now, so we'll probably try and wrap this up with a couple more questions. And for anybody who is watching, if you do have any questions for Landon, when we get to the end of our general discussion, I'm happy to take questions. So if you've got any, please do pop them in the comments in the chat so that I can pass those on to Landon. So we've upgraded to lithium, we've upgraded the chargers, we've put some solar on, maybe we've put an inverter in. How do we ensure that we get the maximum life out of the lithium battery? So there's a lot of opinions floating around about, you know, store your lithium batteries fully charged, make sure that they cycle every single day, drain them down to 60% and turn the isolator off. What's your take on how do you get the maximum life out of a lithium battery?
Really, it's to be nice to it. Like that's the bottom line. So it's about, you know, not discharging it too deep throughout its cycles. You know, like if we're hitting low single digit numbers, I often tell people make sure that we're hitting high numbers within the same week, right? Like If we hit 5%, make sure we hit 95% within a week, and that's because of that balance. Excuse me. That's going to help keep the batteries happy. When we can charge them slow, that's going to help keep the batteries happy. But yeah, I think that's the main things about keeping it happy. You said something else though, and I lost my train of thought. What was your question around about the keeping them happy?
Oh, it's like if we're going to store them, do we store them fully charged? Do we store them on a do we store them on a float? Do we let them sit with a solar panel and cycle down 5% every night, or drain them to 60% and flip the isolator and then come back 3 months later? How do we, what's your take on the best way to get the maximum life out of a lithium battery that's in storage?
For sure. And I guess every manufacturer is going to have a different set of recommendations, right? Like they're going to have a different what they believe to be okay. It depends. So let's use your case for example. Like your van sits in your backyard. You leave your fridge on. You leave anything else going in the van.
So in the backyard, we don't leave it with the fridge on. The fridge draws 160 watts on AC. And if you get a few cloudy days, that can hammer the batteries like quite a bit. Generally, the residual DC draw in the camper consists of the management systems. There's a 4G router and a few other associated bits and pieces in here. All of the MPPTs, when they're idling, draw a bit of current. We see about 10 to 12 amp hours of residual draw overnight on our system, and it just sits in the backyard and it just charges back up every morning, and by 10 o'clock the system's fully charged again. We haven't seen any adverse effects, but a lot of people would be very quick to tell us that we should be draining it to 60% and isolating it, and that'll get the maximum life out of the batteries. But I think there's a lot of myths here around what the best way is to do this.
For sure. And I always find it interesting, with the myths that we hear on, forums and that type of stuff, that there's always a little bit of truth behind it, right? But it's about interpreting that with a personal case. But, the 60% rule that is around, from my understanding, is around the discharge of the BMS. So because it's got the mini computer within the battery, that's got a brain, right? That needs to be churning over to be, monitoring the bloody bits and pieces or whatever. So, to keep it at 60% so that it has a period of time that, we come back a month later and it'll be at 55%, and then another month it'll be 50%, that there's a period of time. And generally, and it's probably based around the only troubles that I've ever had with batteries is after they've been sitting, not being charged for such a long period of time. So if there was one the other day and it was in his boat, he went out boating, God only knows what the battery percentage was when he gets home. He parked his boat in his shed and he come back to it 12 months later and the battery's gone completely flat. So I think that the batteries going completely flat is going to cause a lot more damage than keeping them on charge, because that's where they're going to be happy in that top 5%, right? Because that's when they're balancing, that's when they're doing all of their stuff. Once they start to drizzle down, they start to get imbalanced, those cells within the battery, and that's when they'll start to get grumpy. So I'd definitely, be keeping it at 100%. If my caravan was in a storage yard, a lot of storage yards these days want you to be isolating your battery system, which that's their choice, I suppose. I'd be driving in the driveway. I'd be getting my stuff out of the fridge and, backing it in, all of that type of stuff. It might be at 95, 98% by the time you've done all that. I'll just flick the isolator and that'll be fine. You come back in 12 months, it's still going to have some charge left in it. It's not going to get into that danger zone of that flat. So if I was to store a battery, I would put it at 100% and turn it off. Otherwise, if it was to be always in the backyard, and there was some loads on it, that's also fine. I think it's keeping that in that happy window. So, but yet again, each battery manufacturer might have a different opinion on that as well. So, but yeah, I don't really have that trouble as it gets discharged every day. So
Cool. Now, in our initial discussions, the question here was actually slightly different. This is going to be sort of the second last question. T does have a question, which I'm going to ask at the very end, which I think will make you chuckle. The original question was batteries you would recommend. I guess the more general question there is, like, what is the gear that you have used, that you have tested, that you know to be tried and true? And we're not just talking about batteries here. We're talking about batteries, solar panels, chargers. Are you a Victron guy? Are you a Renogy guy? Are you an Energive guy? Are you like what are the brands that you believe to be to provide good, solid, reliable, repeatable results?
For sure, and this is where it comes down to that fit for purpose word the sentence I said before as well. What we do in our bus is totally different to even what you do, and then that's totally different to people who are just doing a 3-month trip, and I find for that the support network around the Victron gear and the reliability, that they're a super simple inverter in their makeup. They've got a big copper coil in them, and they're an old school technology that have been around a very long time, and that makes them super reliable, right? And they've built that reputation over years. So Victron is sort of like, if you're using it, working it hard type thing, Victron is where I go. And then if it's sort of like I'll tell an example. There, a gentleman I spoke to the other day, he was from South Australia. He plans on doing to the East Coast, up to Cairns, and back down to South Australia for 3 months with his family, right? And he sort of, he's been quoted these $15,000 to $20,000 Victron systems, and he sort of come to me with being like, well, like what should I do type thing, and like for him, like to have a lower cost system means that he can afford to do that trip, right? Like if he spent 15 grand on his solar system, that's 15 grand out of his budget, and that's about his budget for the whole trip, right? Like it's a crazy a lot of money spent. So that's when fit for purpose comes into place, because there's alternative brands that aren't that cheap and nasty, questionable quality, but they're still decent enough to be reliable and safe. And that's where I brought Renogy on board to be that alternative for me. So to have a brand, and so, for me to summarize that, if you're full-time living, using it hard, even if it's a van that you're going to be keeping forever type thing, the Victron stuff is the way to go. And for that cost effective sort of, 3 weekends a year and maybe a month-long trip every now and again, Renogy is a great solution for that as well. So, and that's not to say the Red Arcs and the Energives and the whatever else are terrible, and it's just that I don't know those brands. That's not where I spend my time. And I notice as well, every brand sort of has its particular area that it focuses on, and for Victron, like they focus on some pretty big systems, like as is in the middle of where Victron sort of sit type thing. So I love them for buses, but some of these other brands like even like Red Arcs and Energive, they're probably more around like your 200 series Land Cruiser install and your caravan type thing. So it's
battery in the back of the ute kind of installs.
For sure, yeah, and they're really good at that. They do that well, but that's not the world that I live in, I suppose. So yeah, I guess like going down that full Victron system is the ideal scenario. But then Renogy is a great solution as well to be keeping a bit of money in your pocket, I suppose. It is a bit more cost effective.
All right. So if somebody who's been watching this video or is watching this video in the future likes what they're hearing from you, they like your approach to things, and they want to talk to you about, potentially getting a system designed. I understand you don't do a lot of installs, but you do a lot of system designs that can then be passed on to other people to do that install. How would they go about getting in touch?
For sure. So on our website, it's down here actually, Zero Grid Australia, or it's just zerogrid.com.au. I've got like a phone booking service. So I'm a one-man show. I work by myself. So I work by a booking calendar, and people can book in little chats or big long-winded chats, and that's where I help people sort of come to those conclusions about what size system suits them. I can even put them in touch with installers. I've got a good friend network of installers sort of all over the place. But even sometimes, people have inherited a van and it's got some, you know, slight gremlins that, you know, you need someone to talk it out with and that type of stuff. So I love, you know, helping with that type of stuff as well. So yeah, that's the best way is through my website. And I'm also like in the process of, you know, adding a bit more information to my YouTube, you know, about clarifying the Australian standards and that type of stuff, just to fill those gaps up of the confusions that both Josh and I see on the internet a lot. So yeah, keep an eye out there as well.
Yeah, and certainly we've used our platform to try and raise some awareness around some of these common misconceptions as well. And I think you'll probably be seeing a little bit more of Landon here and there within our socials and whatnot going forward.
Yeah, easy.
So we haven't had any more questions come in on the comments on YouTube. T, however, did have a comment, and anybody who's seen T on our channel will understand that T's a little bit of a shit stirrer, and she doesn't take things too seriously. So she wanted to know, do Sparkies actually like being called Sparkies?
Oh, yeah, yep, we do. Yep, generally.
Or was it one of those things that you hated as an apprentice and you became to learn to love?
Nah, it's straight up that it was just accepted. That's just what you're signing up to do, you know. Like I've been called a Sparky more times than I've been called an electrician, so you get used to these things, I suppose. So yeah,
if someone calls you the electrician, you tuck tail and turn the other way because you're in trouble.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
All right. Well,
really,
thanks,
we should be called Power Rangers, really. Like that should be a official term.
That works so well. That sounds so cool.
I don't know if you could hear T in the background. She just said that works so well. That sounds cool. Yeah. So yeah.
So here on in, you can refer to me as Landon the Power Ranger.
Landon Power Ranger.
All right. Well, look, on that note, look, thanks heaps for coming on board tonight. We did go a little bit over the expected time, but I've been watching. Most people have hung around for the whole thing. So look, thanks everybody for joining and sticking around for this one. If you're interested in getting in touch with Landon, feel free to reach out to him. I'm sure he can provide plenty of advice. I hope this has cleared up some misconceptions for you guys. Landon has a whole bunch of really good videos over on his YouTube channel to do with all sorts of various off-grid topics. In particular, the video that Landon produced about how to build a box that complies with a habitable area requirement is a really good one. And there's a whole bunch of other content there that's worth checking out. If you're enjoying what T and I are doing here on YouTube, please don't forget, like, subscribe, and share our videos. We do have YouTube memberships available where our members will get early access to content, as well as priority responses to comments and a shout out at the end of each of our regular videos. So if you want to support us further, you can go sign up for a YouTube membership. And as I said before, if you like Landon, if you like what he's doing, head on over to his YouTube channel, give him a subscribe, check out his videos. There's lots of really good information over there. So look, thanks for coming on board, Landon. And yeah, I'm keen to figure out how we can do more cool things in the future.
Yeah, 100%. We'll catch up one day as well. We're heading back to South Australia, but we might be back through New South Wales. You never know where we're going to be. So keep an eye out for the bus.
Yeah, absolutely. And who knows, we might. I'd love to do a trip over west to Menindee Lakes and Broken Hill, and once you go that far, it's not that much further. So we'll see how we go. Anyway, thanks for coming on board, Landon, and yeah, we'll catch up soon.
No stress. Love your work, mate. Cheers. See you, mate.